Hey guys, thanks for hopping on to this week's Making Multifamily Money session. It's a slightly more intimate group today. I guess let's just go around and introduce ourselves. I was kind of talking to Wesley offline, but Wesley, can you kind of just talk about yourself, your experience, and I guess where you're looking to learn? All right, cool. Thank you. Brian, can you kind of share about yourself and I guess how much real estate do you own if you own any, and what's kind of your goal? Yep, maybe no mic. Maybe didn't expect to get put on the spot. Okay, cool, no problem. So yeah, this is kind of a new group. I host this every Wednesday. About me, I am a pharmacy director by day. I scaled from 0 to 90 units in about 5 years. Started back in 2017. So honestly, when I started investing, it only went up. So kind of bet my story briefly. Started off in the Bay Area, started house hacking. So I came out of school with $250,000 of student debt out of pharmacy school. So first 4 years focused on paying all that student debt off. It was very intense, right? That's the first thing you're focused on. And after I paid off $250,000 of student debt in about 4 years, that's when I was like, well, what's next, right? What's next? So the next logical progression for most people is you want to save for a house, right? And that's exactly what I did. I saved up for a house in the East Bay. It was $800,000. I down 10%. So that's $80,000. And I lived in the master bedroom and I rented out. It was a 4 bedroom, 3 bath. I lived in the master bedroom and I rented out the three other bedrooms for like $1,000 each. So that was $3,000. And that was enough to cover my mortgage. My mortgage payment was $3,000 and I had to cover the rest, right? So property tax, insurance, utilities, and that came out to be about $1,500 a month. So I was basically living in a master bedroom for about $1,500 a month, and that's pretty affordable in the Bay Area, right? I mean, most apartments, especially like San Jose, it's like 35, and San Francisco like 45. So it was pretty affordable, and I did that and quickly saved up for another down payment, and I just had to relocate jobs. So then I relocated to San Francisco, and I was near SF State, and I bought another house. Same thing. Like down 10% for 1.1 million. So that's $100,000 down roughly. And in San Francisco, it was a single family home, but it was a makeshift duplex. So the upper unit was like 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and the downstairs unit was 2 bed, 1 bath, and they both have separate entrances, shared utilities. So I did the same concept, right? So I lived in the master bedroom, rented out the two other rooms in the upper unit for like 1,200 each, so that's 2,400, and I rented out the downstairs 2 bedroom, 1 bath with a little kitchenette for like 2,800 to four college students. So once again, right, I that 5,400 ish covered my mortgage, and then I just covered the utilities, property tax, insurance. So I think I was living there for about maybe I don't know 1,500 give or take there as well. So that's what I did for my second property, and then relocated to SoCal where I'm currently at. And same thing, I bought a single family home, house hacked it, 10% down, and that was kind of my goal for 10 years is to kind of repeat this model. But I wanted to invest in real estate for cash flow, and in California, you don't get cash flow, you get appreciation, right? So most of my properties were breaking even or maybe slightly negative, to be honest. Maybe 200, $300 negative a month. If you have vacancies and repairs and whatnot, your monthly payment, what your rent is, honestly, it's breaking even at best. And I self-manage, so that doesn't even include property management. Um, so basically, once I realized that, I'm like, well, I need cash flow, right? California's all appreciation, no cash flow. So that kind of got me looking at other markets, right, out of state. And it was intimidating for me. because I've most of the states you invest in the Midwest. I've never been in the Midwest, right? Personally, and I stumbled across Bigger Pockets, heard about Huntsville, Alabama. There's a lot of rocket scientists there, high density of PhDs there. Military base, Air Force base, space base. So I just said, okay, well, let me check this out. I ended up finding a realtor, and they actually brought me a brand new build construction house, $260,000, and they said that they can rent it for $2,100. So I just said, wow, it's amazing. You get $260,000, $2,100, and when I ran the numbers, I cash flowed about $800 a month. And since it's a brand new house, not much maintenance, right? A lot of things are under warranty. So I down 25%. It was like what, $70,000 ish, give or take. Um, so I was like, okay, great. I'm gonna do this once a year. I'm gonna buy like one or two of these a year, and eventually, if I cash flow $800 a month, I own 10 of these. I get $8,000 a month. At that point, I can replace my W-2, right? So that's how people do it with single family homes. But then I quickly realized that, wait a second, like, well, single family homes, your debt to income ratio caps out after a while, right? Even though I make a good income as a pharmacy director, close to 200,000, you know, but after a while, once you accumulate enough conventional loans, your DTI maxes out, right? Or if, like, when I moved to SoCal, my income lowered because the cost of living is lower here, so they pay less too, right? So now, like, not only do I own more real estate, I own more debt, but my income decreased. So, this is not a sustainable model. So after that, I dived in deeply into apartment complex and multifamily investing. And that's when my mind was completely blown. So once I learned the concept that if you have two single family homes right next to each other, and let's say one single family rents for 5,000, one rents for 10,000, when you go to sell that property, that single family home, they sell for the same price because it's valued exactly the same. It's based on the sales comps, right? So if your neighbor house sells for 1 million, your house will sell for 1 million. It doesn't matter how much rent you get. Your house can get 5,000 rent, the neighbors can get 10,000. It doesn't matter. They sell for $1 million, right? But you take that same concept and you apply it to apartment complexes. You have a 20 unit that rents for, let's say $5,000 a month. A 20 unit next door rents for $10,000 a month. Well, the one that rents for $20,000 or $10,000 a month was worth double. That's more powerful, right? So the value of apartments is based on the net operating income divided by the market cap rate. The net operating income is income minus expense, and the market cap rate is determined by the market. So where I invest in Oklahoma, it's 8 cap. So you just take the NOI divided by 8 cap, so that's 8.08%. That's how you determine your value, right? So it's a very simple formula. So as you increase the income, you increase your numerator, which increases the value, right? So it's very simple. It's just basically income approach. So once I learned that, I just said that, well, single family homes, you get cash flow or appreciation, right? California is only appreciation. Like my first single family home that I bought 5 years ago, I bought for $800,000. It's worth $1.3 million now. It went up by $500,000 in 5 years. I did nothing, right? My single family home in Alabama, I cash flow $800 a month, but maybe in about 2 years that I owned it, it may have went up by like $30,000, right? It's good, but it's not $500,000, right? So, you're choosing either or, but when you go to apartments, the more cash flow you get, increases your NOI, increases the value. So you actually get both. So once I learned that concept, it never made sense for me to buy single family homes ever, right? Except for me to live in personally. So, I just said, okay, well, I want to invest in apartments. Like, what next, right? And then after that, it's, the number one question is like, well, how do you choose your market, right? There's so many different markets out there. Obviously I can't invest in California. It's way too expensive for an apartment complex. So I just came across, was networking, actually had a strong property manager in Oklahoma City. So that's how I chose my market. I just had a really good property manager in Oklahoma City. Like that was the bottom line. Like I had a team there, right? My property manager had they can refer me contractors, everything I need, lenders, and So actually, it was just given to me by another investor, um, who I used, and that's the best way to find your property manager. It's literally referrals. But what I do is I actually have like I think it's 10 questions that I give to all my students, like how to interview your property manager, how to interview your general contractor, and usually you want three, so you want two backups. So I have two backups ready to go in case my first property manager doesn't perform. Then I engage my second property manager. That one doesn't perform, you engage your third, and same thing with the contractor, right? You have at least three in your team. So if the first one doesn't perform, then you go down your list, and you want to get multiple quotes as well. So yeah, I just basically said, well, Oklahoma, it's landlord friendly, it's cheap, like literally, in apartment complex in Oklahoma, I got mines for 500,000, 26 units. I mean, in the Bay Area or SoCal, 500,000. What's that get you? A condo? It gets you a condo that you can rent out for maybe $2,000. But in Oklahoma, my 26 unit that I bought, cash flows around or grosses around, I think around $9,000 a month, like out the gate, right? And that's with rents not being increased. Um, so kind of going back, basically, I chose Oklahoma. Landlord friendly. It was more cost effective, more of a cash flow market. Um, and I just said, okay, well, how do I find deals, right? Because as a new investor, no one takes you seriously, right? No broker will take you seriously, no syndicator will take you seriously, even owners won't take you seriously because you don't have a track record. Like, why would they trust you, right? That's kind of the hurdle that you jump into, and um, so I just said, okay, well, that sucks, right? Like, no broker wants to work with me. No lenders say, well, what's your track record? And I own 5 single-family homes. That's a decent track record in my mind, but they don't care. Like, it's a different game when you do apartment complexes. And so, yeah, like now you're stuck, right? So I just said, okay, well, I'm going to learn to generate off-market leads. So I started a direct mailing campaign, sent out 300 letters a month for 6 months. And I said, okay, if the lenders don't like me, if the brokers don't like me, I'm going to find the deals myself. So I cut the broker out of the equation, sent letters out, and then did that for 6 months. And, every month I did it, about, 10 owners called me out of 300 letters, about 3% response rate. And, from there, talk to the owners, like, hey, tell me about your property. Um, how long have you owned it? Any partners in the deal? Blah, blah, blah. How many units? What's the rent? Can I get, a profit and loss statement? Can I get a T12, a rent roll? All that stuff. And then, most of them, out of the 10 that call, maybe one are real serious about actually selling. Um, so, you have to do that for 6 to 9 months. And then eventually I had an owner who was an attorney said, hey, I have this 26 unit, owned it for 20 years. So what does that tell me? If he owns it for 20 years, it's no debt. So I can do seller financing, right? Seller carry first. That guy can become the bank for me. So I had that in my back pocket out the gate, right? I already know that. And I just said, okay, like what's a good price look like for you? And then they just said, well, you make me an offer. They always do that, right? They never want to give you a price. So I just said, okay, well, can you send me a T12 and a rent roll, and let me take a look at it, and let me run it by my lender, my mortgage broker, and see what their thoughts are. So obviously at that point, there's three methods where I make an offer. So number one is a tax assessed price. That's public information. Just look up the address. That's usually the offer I'll go with because it's the lowest. Number two is a net operating income divided by the cap rate. So based on the T12, you find the income, you find the expense, you find the NOI, and you divide that by the market cap rate of, it's about 7 to 8% Oklahoma City. And number three is the price per unit, right? So you can find sales comps, and let's just say it's whatever, 30,000 per unit. It's a 26 unit apartment complex. You do the math, right? 26 units times 30,000. And, from those three offers, I usually take the lowest one, and that's my offer, right? And typically it's tax assessed price. That's always the lowest offer. So I offered him, hey, I'll give you $500,000 for this 26 unit. And I thought he was going to say no. I thought he was going to counter me or be offended. They usually are when you do the tax assessed price. But lucky for me, he just accepted my offer, like as is. I just said, okay, great. So, I underwrote the deal. basically it was going to cash flow probably like 8% cash to cash day one. Rents averaged around 450. He hasn't. Oh, that's all 450 all bills paid. So the landlord covered the gas, electricity, and water. And he hasn't raised rents in 5 years. But when I talked to a property manager, market rates, assuming some renovation, would be around $700, and they would pay their own utilities. So 450 with utilities minus 100, that's 350 net essentially. So I can double the rents essentially with some renovation. So I already knew out the gate if I paid half a million and I can double the rents, well, my value just doubled, right? Of the apartment complex. Um, so, basically, went sent a contract, went under escrow, did my due diligence, did a full inspection of all 26 units. Needed a new roof, needed some electrical panels, needed to be replaced. Asked for about $120,000 of seller repair credit. He said no. I countered him about $60,000 of seller repair credit. He said yes. So what does that do? It lowers my down payment, right? So that seller repair credit lowered my down payment. So effectively, I downed about maybe 12% from 25%. So people say, you need a lot of money to do apartments. Well, it's proof right there. I downed about $70,000 and I got a 26 unit apartment complex. And when the bank appraised it at $750,000. So I made $250,000, no, $300,000 equity day one because I got the seller repair credit too, right? So literally, I made $300,000 equity day one. And when you present the deal to the bank, I had no experience, right? But the deal was so good that of course they would lend on me because as long as the debt service coverage ratio hits above 1.25, I think mine was like 1.5 out the gate. So of course, like I had no experience, but with commercial lending, they look at the uh, the property first, the investor second. So the fact that I had such a good deal overrode the fact that I had no track record. And I also leveraged my property manager who's been doing this for 20 years. He managed apartments for 20 years, right? So basically, fast forward, I owned it about a year and a half now. I renovated about 10 units for about 8,000 to 10,000 each. So new kitchen, new LVP flooring, new bathroom, fresh paint, all typical works. And I did hit my rents of 700 on average. So 650 for a one bedroom, 750 for a two bedroom, and I renovated about 10 units. I think I rented out about 8 so far. At the higher rents, I basically hit my goal, right? But kind of one thing that sucked was it took about almost a year to start renovations because of the labor shortage and supply chain shortage. So did that. That was my first deal. From that same batches of letter that I sent, the same 1,800 letters, I was able to get my second deal, which was my 20 unit. And it's the same thing, right? Like the guy called, it was a 20 unit. He just said, hey, offer me tax assessed price. And he told me that. I said, I just want whatever the tax assessed price is. I just said out the gate, I already knew out the gate that he wants a tax assessed price. It's already going to be under market value, right? So now I learned it. So I gave him tax assessed price of like 415K, but unfortunately the cash flow on that property was so terrible that most banks won't lend on it, and it was a little bit deferred, so it's more of a fixer. So I just said, the guy, I just said, well, no bank will lend on it, right? Because the price is too high. So I just said, well, we have two options. I can do a subject to or master lease agreement. So you continue the debt, right? You continue paying your lender. I'll pay you a fixed amount every month, and then you pay your lender, right? That's option one. Well, that's the only option. Or option two is you lower your price until a lender finances this. So he wanted to take the money. He had a $90,000 loan on it. I was willing to say, okay, I'll give you your price of 420. Whatever. I'll give you 5% down. You can negotiate your down payment. I want to do like 5% down, something nominal. 5% interest only, 5-year term, right? To get me to fix up this unit. Whatever. Do my value add and renovate it, whatever. But he wanted to just get paid and move on to invest his money in a business. So I just said, okay, well, let me underwrite this. Came out to be $350,000 was the price. A hard money lender would finance it. So basically, I got it 350, down 25%. The lender is going to give me 100,000 to renovate it, And then hopefully when I'm done with it, it's worth around maybe $700,000, $800,000. So I'm maybe all in, let's say 450, maybe it's worth 800,000. Um, but this property is a lot more work, unfortunately. So when I took over, as expected, everyone stopped paying. A lot of people left. There's a bed bug infestation that somehow, I think when I did my inspection, the pest report was clean. But then when I took over, a month later, there was a bed bug infestation. And what happened was they were letting homeless people into the units to exchange services, under the table services. And that led to a bed bug outbreak. So when I took over, I had to fumigate all units, which cost me $10,000. And now I'm renovating all the units. So like, unfortunately, when I bought it, only like there were like 4 vacant units. Now today, it's about like 8 out of 20 are vacant or occupied right now. So now I'm like 14 vacants, right? So that was kind of my hit. And then my second or my third deal is my mobile home park. So I own a 200 lot mobile home park for 1.1 million. I got seller financing on this deal, so I just put 10% down. And without getting to the weeds, it's a huge value add park. It's about, I think, only 30 out of 200 were occupied. When I took over, I had to evict about half of them because they weren't paying. So it's about 15. But my goal was just to kind of fix it up and kind of do a fix and flip, to fix it up and flip it to like a large syndicator and just make a quick, profit. My intention isn't to buy and hold because I don't have the capital to go all the way, but I can at least build it enough to flip it to a syndicator. So that one I'm flipping. The other 2 apartments, I'm planning on doing the value add and do the BRRRR. So pull my money out, cash out refi tax free, and then buy more. So I did all that honestly during COVID. So I scaled pretty rapidly. So yeah, that's kind of my journey. Pretty long winded there, but so yeah, so kind of I hit the point where like I kind of ran on my own capital. So, and also my mental capacity hit a max. I mean, working a full-time job and doing 3 heavy value add lifts. I mean, that's a full-time job in itself as well. So, I hit a mental capacity. So I stopped. I'm not into the syndication model. Currently, I don't believe in syndication without me having a track record first. And I also believe that, like the syndication model is a different business model, right? So the syndicators, they're incentivized by the fees. So they get an acquisition fee, they get a disposition fee, and they get an asset management fee. So what does that mean? You're incentivized to buy and sell, right? For me, I don't want to buy or sell. I want to buy and hold because it's a lot of work to find these deals, a lot of work to stabilize it. And then once you cash out refi, why would you sell a golden goose, right? Like you have a golden goose, why would you kill it? So that's why syndicators are motivated in a different way, right? Nothing wrong against the model. It's just a different business model. For me, I just want to buy a whole portfolio. And honestly, if you own about 50, let's say 50 units, average profit, probably Oklahoma is about $200 per unit. And that's $10,000 a month passive income, right? Like at that point, you don't even have to work your W-2. And you can organically, slowly buy more and more real estate. You can hit $20,000 a month probably in the next like 5 years, right? Organically, without stressing yourself out. So like why, why even go through that stress of dealing with indicators? Because like me personally, like if I asked you guys to give me money and I lost your guys' money, I would be more stressed out about that than losing my own money, right? I wouldn't be able to sleep if I lost your guys' money, but if I lost my money, like whatever, it sucks, right? I just have to work a little longer. So definitely a different model. And, I come across a lot of like syndicators who say they want to do it because they think, oh, I don't need my own money, right? And that's true. You don't need your own money, but like you have to build that track record first. And it just depends what your goal is, right? Like for me, a lot of people tell me, yeah, like I have about $50 million asset under management, right? But they own 1% of that 50 million. So I mean, what is that? That's like 5 million. I mean, my real estate portfolio is 12 million already, right? So that's equivalent to if I was a syndicator of like having 120 million assets under management. So it just really depends like what your goal is, right? But yeah, I will admit my way, I cannot grow that big, right? Like it might be organic, but you'll be surprised, right? I've been only doing this for 5 years. I got to, let's say 90 units after I sell my mobile home park, let's just say I'm at like 50. But then once I cash out refi, I put out all my money. Now I can go buy like a 50 unit apartment complex. Now I have 100, right? Now I value at that, and then 3 years, cash out refi again, have even more money, then I buy 100, right? So that's literally in 15 years, you have 200 units by yourself. I mean, that's pretty big, right? No one's gonna like knock on you that like you're not a big time investor. So it just really depends like what your goals and objectives are. But that's why I kind of preface it. Like a lot of people go into it, say, I don't have money, but like, why would people trust you if you don't have your money, right? I'm with this recession hitting, a lot of syndicators that got started when I got started are gonna get hit, right? And when they get hit, I'm gonna swoop in and buy their properties for when they sell at a loss. So it's just really your mentality, because like people are overpaying for properties. All deals that brokers brought me, I've probably looked at thousands of deals brought to me by brokers, and they're off market deals, and all of them were overpriced. The income was inflated. The expenses were, they were quoting me 35% in Oklahoma, and I own two apartment complexes, and I know the expense ratio is 55%. So they're already undercutting the expense by 20%. And why are they doing that? They're trying to justify a higher price point, right? Because NOI divided by cap rate. You want to inflate your NOI, you inflate the value. But then if you do the math with my underwriting, it's like, oh, you're going to lose money on this property. So you never overpay. So that's why I don't even like working at brokers. Unfortunately, I've never had a broker bring me a good deal. So I go off market, you know. Um, so overall, that's just kind of my journey and kind of my mindset. Kind of any questions that anyone has? Yeah, yeah. So yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So, what can I teach in my course? So, my whole basis of my course is like direct mailing, leading creative financing. Because when you go direct to owner, you have no middleman, right? Like, if you have a broker, most brokers, or just in general, if you mention creative financing to a broker, they're gonna write you off like you have no money, right? Or it's too much effort, right? They don't understand it. Number two is if you come out to these owners directly with creative financing, they're gonna write you off too. It's like, oh, you don't have money. You're not serious, right? So I never approach with seller financing out the gate. I never do that. I will approach that. I'm gonna have a lender involved, right? So basically, for me, is when the owners call me, I have about 10 questions that I go through, and it's to build trust and to understand their pain points. So like, and then once I understand their pain point, so the most common one is, oh, I'm 68, I want to retire, I'm self managing, I just want to retire. Number two is like, oh, maybe I went through a divorce and I need to sell this. Right. Number three is, oh, I'm going to pass away soon, my health is declining, and my kids don't want to inherit this. They don't want to deal with it. Right. So you have to understand them. Right. So that's the healthcare side of me. Right? I'm a pharmacist, so I want to understand you as a person. Like I say that like a lot of like accountants get into real estate and they're just so focused on the numbers, but there's a human aspect to this, right? Like you're working with a human, and I'm some random Asian guy from California sending you a letter to someone in Oklahoma, right? So how do you build that trust that you trust me to do the deal, but also like trust me on a human level. So like the first phone call, it's just building trust and rapport, and I'm trying to get their pain points. I want to know, are there partners in the deal? Is it a trust? Is it LLC? Who are the partners? Syndication? Is it just you? Like, who are the decision makers in this deal? I'm trying to understand all that stuff, right? And then once I understand all that, obviously they'll give me the financial information. If they give me a price, let's just say they want $1.5 million for the property, But I already know at the gate it's probably worth 1 million, right, to hit that debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. But I'll humor them and have my lenders underwrite it. And why I do that is because I never want to be the bad guy. The lender's the bad guy, not me. I want to pay you 1.5 million, but my lender will not lend me 1.5 because this is how they underwrote the deal, right? So I'm educating them that, hey, I got your price, I got all your numbers. This is how the bank underwrote it, right? So whatever income, expense is half. You can do your loan terms, right? Whatever 30-year, 25-year AM. Lenders do stress tests, right? So I can get 30-year AM, but maybe they'll stress test at 25-year AM, 7% interest, 25% or 75% LTV, right? So from there, they're just calculating debt service coverage ratio of wanting to be 1.25, right? So you can kind of run them, there's calculators out there. So they'll just say, yeah, it doesn't hit that debt service coverage ratio, so that doesn't make sense for them. A price that makes sense for them is whatever, $1 million. You want 1.5, an offer of 1 million makes sense to my lender, right? So you're just saying, and at that point, they're probably frustrated, right? Because a lot of these mom and pop owners, they have a number in mind that they want to sell it at. And that's when you can throw in creative financing. So typically I'll go like, well, if I give you your price at 1.5, will you give me terms? And usually out the gate, they're like, oh, like, what do you mean? Right? So, at that point, it's explaining seller financing in a way they understand. Right? So, so if the property's owned free and clear, then obviously they can become the bank. Right? So I typically say, well, hey, you've worked hard managing this property for 20 years, and now you're going to move up to become a bank. And the bank, it's an easy job, right? They just collect monthly payments. They don't deal with the tenants, toilets, none of those issues, right? So they become the bank. And then the other explanation too is the capital gains tax, right? Like, this thing's free and clear, and you sell it, long-term capital gains tax, it's 0 to 20%, depending on the amount. So you can actually calculate their capital gains tax out for them. I do that for them. And I'm just like, hey, you sell this property, this, you're going to pay Uncle Sam. I think capital gains tax is around 15-20%. So let's just call it $1 million. Let's say sell for $1 million. That's $150,000 that you're going to pay Uncle Sam, like, this year, right? But if you seller finance this, let's say I give you 10% down, and monthly interest only payments, you only pay property tax on the down payment plus all my interest payments for that year, right? And you still get monthly income, right? And then, so it's basically, once you kind of throw that, they might just be fixating on our price, right? So you have to kind of understand the seller motivation. So, like, do they just want a price and they're happy seller financing it? And you basically tell them, like, hey, like, if I fail and go bankrupt, you take back over the property, you keep my down payment, you keep all my interest payments, you keep all renovations I've done, and now you just assume the property again, and you've been managing it for 20, 30 years already, so you already know what to do. It's nothing new for you, right? So it's just kind of explaining it. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's just building that trust. And um, a lot of what I do is called like active listening. So it's just kind of like listen to what they say, teach them the concepts of seller financing, and then how it benefits them, and then basically share your plan. Like, oh, I'm going to come in, whatever, do some renovations, try to raise the rents up to market value, and then once I raise the value, I'm going to get a permanent loan, to pay you out, and you get your money at that point. So let's just say they want to retire in 5 years, whatever. Let's say there's an attorney, he wants to retire in 5 years. Well, seller finance me that deal for 5 years. I'll pay you, and then when you retire 5 years, I'll get permanent financing on it. So that's just kind of like, it's just understanding those pain points and pitching it. But let's just say a lot of times I do say no, like, sorry, like, I just want this regular traditional bank financing. At that point, I just kind of move on. Because the bank won't finance it at 1.5. They won't give me creative financing. So at that point, I just put them in my Google Calendar to follow up in maybe a month or two. Just to text them, say, hey, like, have you thought about it? I'm still open, and you just move on. But if they're willing to work with you, then that's when you can kind of like pitch it out, and kind of run the numbers for them, right? So I typically do 10-5-5 rule, so 10% down, 5% interest only, 5-year term. That's a starting point. Another hack that I do is I'll give you 5% down at the close of escrow, and then in over 1 year, I'll give you the next 5% down. And then if you have enough cash flow, that cash flow will cover that next 5% down payment, right? That's a way to get into a property with 5% down out of your pocket. So that's what I love about creative financing. You can do whatever you want, right? So as a real life example, my mobile home park that I bought, right? So he wanted $1.1 million, highly distressed asset, right? I'm pretty stressed by it. It gives me heartburn. Um, but he was basically really bit. He took on the park, bit more than he can chew. Didn't want to put any money in the park. It was highly distressed. No one will lend on it unless it's a hard money loan. So basically, I just said, hey, like, I can, I'll give you your price of 1.1 million. He owned it free and clear. I just said, hey, I have whatever, let's just say $500,000 to come in to add capex to fix up these vacant mobile homes. And we're going to rent them out to tenants. And then I want to do this over, a 5-year span. And then my goal is to flip it over to a larger syndicator. We think that I can get it for 1.1. Let's say I put in half a million in, I'm in 1.6. And I think I can probably sell it for 2.1 in maybe a year or two. Right. So it's a quick flip for me. Right. So basically I just said, all right, well, since I can bring in the capital, you'll finance this deal for me. And if I fail and go bankrupt, you got my 10% down payment. You're getting all the renovation that I put in, which is like, $500,000. At that point, if I fail, you got all that revenue. You just continue what I did, and then you can flip it to a syndicator. So it's no risk to them. They're removed from the operations. I actually negotiated deferred payments for a year, so I didn't have to pay interest payments for a year. But I added into the end of my loan. So my loan was $1 million, deferred interest payments for a year. So my total loan would be about $1,050,000 or $1,000,000.05. And so yeah, I did that, and I'm about a year into it. Renovated about 20 mobile homes, rented those out, and trying to pitch it to a syndicator about that price point of about 2.1. So hoping to get about a $500,000 profit in about a year. So, basically just execute the plan. So the way I kind of phrase it is, in general, if the seller is motivated, they'll work with you. And if you built trust, right? If you built trust and the seller is motivated, they'll work with you. So all three of my deals, the two apartment complexes, like honestly, like they just accepted a reasonable price. Uh, they built trust of me. They like the fact that I was a pharmacist, right? I'm a working professional. I'm a doctor technically. I owned real estate. So I just built that trust, but they were just very motivated. Like anytime I asked for any documents, they would give me financial documents. They're very transparent. I was very transparent in my process. I communicate them regularly. So the way I phrase it, if you have a motivated buyer and a motivated seller, that's how deals happen, right? But a lot of times you will have sellers who are just fishing for a high price, right? They just say, hey, pay me a pie in the sky price and I'll sell it. They're not motivated. They're just fishing. Like, hey, you're some rich guy from California, overpay for my property. No, like I'm not going to do that, right? Even though in my mind, like even my mobile home park for 1.1 million, that's cheaper than a single family home that I bought in my San Francisco house, like literally, right? So in my mind, like, oh, this is cheap, right? But it's just kind of the strategy there. Um, so yeah, did that kind of answer your question there? That's kind of long-winded, but it's just really, if they're motivated, like you will know they're motivated because they're just willing to work with you, and they should be communicating with you frequently. And if you haven't done that, then maybe you haven't built trust yet. But once you built that trust, um, it's very fluid. Like I've all three of those deals was a very smooth close. So usually I do a lot of the weeding up front, to see how they are. Yeah. Does that answer your question there, Wesley? Yeah, yeah. So I've done it multiple times. I had two students. One just closed on a 35 unit in Mississippi for 750K, like instant, like first letter batch. Got that deal, and they were just motivated. So I think during this day and age, when people want seller market prices, but it's shifting towards a buyer market with higher interest rates. At this point, creative financing would be very powerful. So a lot of people like, I'll give you your price, but you better give me terms, right? So I think in this market, it's even more imperative to do direct mailing and then mastering creative financing. So I have videos, if you check out my YouTube, on both creative financing and direct mailing. So just check it out there. Um, any other questions? 91. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, no, great question. So I went through this personally recently because I scaled from zero to, or I got like almost 80 units, 85 units in like a year. And, I would say like I made the mistake of like, because mobile home parks and apartments are different, right? Not only are they different asset classes and different locations. So like if you're working a full-time W-2, like that's why I want to flip my mobile home park because I just want to focus on one market. Like, because at this point, I have such a strong team in Oklahoma City that I can go from like 50 to 500 units and my energies will be exactly the same because I have one person to talk to, right? I have one person to talk to on a monthly basis or weekly basis about all 500 of my units, all 50 of my units. So that's where I messed up was that like especially when you're working at W-2, you just want to follow one path to success, whatever that is, right? If I have an unfair advantage in Oklahoma City, right? I can get a deal. I just got a deal sent to me off market, and I analyzed it. I'm like, oh, it's actually a pretty reasonable property for turnkey, right? The prior owner rated the value add, but I already know in Oklahoma City, it's about 50K per unit renovated, right? I bought mines for 20K per unit. I'm putting in 10K per unit. I mean, all in 30K, it's going to be worth 50, right? So when I get a deal sent to me, within a minute, I already know if that deal is even worth looking at because I know 50K per unit is renovated turnkey. So if I already do the deal and like it's 60K per unit, I'm like, that's overpriced. I don't even look at it. Or I'll look at it or I'll just be like, hey, like offer 50K per unit only makes sense for me. And out the gate, they might just be like, no, they don't want that. And then you just move on. Right. So you don't waste any time or energy. Um, but also like when I send direct mailing, like if they give me their price, I already know off the top of my head. Like if they say like, oh, like, hey, I'll sell this for like 30K per unit, that's a good deal already for me. I already know at the gate without even knowing much about the property because I know I can put in maybe 8 to 10,000. I'm all in for 40K. It'll be worth 50K. That's a good margin, right? So, like, I would say follow one path, one market, one asset class until you hit financial independence. And once you leave your W-2 job, and at that point, once you leave your W-2 job, then you can maybe branch out to another asset class or to another market, right? For a little bit diversification because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. But to start off, so that's the mistake I made. If I were to go back, I wish I didn't buy the mobile home park and instead took that money and bought another 50 unit in Oklahoma City. And honestly, I'd be a lot less stressed than I am today, right? But don't get me wrong, I learned a lot from doing this mobile home park. That like I know when I'm ready, when I'm financially free, hopefully in 5 years, and I have my Oklahoma portfolio stabilized, I can then buy a mobile home park to do value add and have more energy towards it because I'm free from my W-2 job, right? So that's just kind of the mistake that I learned, and I only learned it because I scaled so fast, right? Like you don't know what it's like until you've done it, right? Like, people are impressed, like, oh, you have 90 units, you must be retired. And I'm like, no, like it's a lot of renovation, a lot of value added. You actually need your job because you need money coming in, and if you're gonna do cash out refi and whatnot, it makes it you get a little bit. It's nicer to tell the bank that hey, I'm working and still pulling in income through W-2, right? So if you told me like 2 years ago I own 90 units, I'd be like, I'm living on a yacht. That's what I'm thinking. But that's not the case, right? I'm still like working at my W-2 and grinding like everybody else. But yeah, while working at W-2, just follow one path to success. Once you hit your financial independence goal, you can leave your W-2 at that point. You can maybe do another asset class, or maybe you don't want to because it's so easy, right? It's really your choice, right? That's what's beautiful about real estate. You can do different asset class. You can just continue in your current market. But obviously as you get a little bigger, you don't want to put like I wouldn't want to own 1,000 units in Oklahoma City. That might be kind of scary, right? You don't want to be dependent on one market um, there. So does that answer your question there, Wesley? Yeah, like you said, like all my single family homes in California are like 800,000 plus. Like that's all. Like that's literally I could sell my three single family homes and turn them into like almost like a 30 unit apartment complex, right? It's like that's almost like 90 units of real estate. So you can sell it, do 1031 exchange, and then basically buy. Like I was looking at a 28 unit that was turnkey for about 1.5 million, and like yeah, my San Francisco house is probably worth 1.5 million or a little bit less. I could literally sell that 1031 exchange it, take the equity from that property I built up, and then buy that. So looking back, I wish I went to apartment complexes, but I understand the trajectory. I got in for 10% down. I house hacked. I need a place to live. I have a lot of. I call them my piggy banks. I can always crack them one day and then transfer it, but it's also a diversification too, right? Because these are just like appreciation. I mean, my return on equity is garbage in California, right? Like my Livermore or my property in San Francisco probably has like $400,000 of equity in it. I'm probably making like $200 cash flow positive, which is amazing in San Francisco. Um, but I can, one day sell it and trade up or just keep it and just have a little bit of diversification. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way. But if your goal is to leave your W-2 as fast as possible, then yeah, you probably do want to go to like apartments out the gate. But like I said, I could easily just 1031 exchange my single family homes that I have and then do it. So, there's no right or wrong answer. Like if you don't mind house hacking, I mean, you can get into a single family home 5% down, right? Especially when you have a high income W-2, right? You can do 5% down on half a $1 million property, $50,000 down, get in there, live there for a year, move out, do it again, right? And then when it goes up in value by 100 or $200,000, you can sell it, 1031 change, buy more apartment complexes. So you can do both. You can buy apartments and, instead of downing 20% in California for $200,000, you can take $100,000, buy your own primary residence to live in, take that $100,000, invest in Oklahoma, and then when you move out your primary, you can sell the old one, trade up to the apartment complex, and repeat your process. I mean, there's so many ways you can do it. Now that I think about that, I wish I did that. I stopped kind of doing it. But yeah, there's no right or wrong way. But definitely for cash flow, yeah, you want to do apartments, and because you can afford a property manager. I'm self managing my single family homes right now, myself, right? Still. Um, so yeah, I would say it, but everyone has their journey, right? And apartments seem intimidating. Like only rich people own apartments. That's what I used to think. Um, so no right or wrong. The key is just getting into real estate, as soon as possible and wait, right? Like I did nothing and made, $500,000 on one single family home, right? I literally did nothing. I just bought it and rented it out. And once you have the equity, you can trade up. So, um, yeah. So about 2 minutes left before this session quits. Any last questions? Quick questions? Yeah. Yeah. So my course, I kind of describe it as like an A to Z system to get your first off-market apartment complex. So my focus is direct mailing. So kind of full disclosure, to be the most successful, you have to send about 300 letters a month. Um, I do offer a service where I'll do the letters for the students that enroll. If you just want to focus on answering your phone, but you basically send out letters every month, underwrite the deals, and then make offers. So basically, it's kind of A through Z. So how do you choose your market? How to vet your property manager? How to underwrite the deal? How to pick a property manager? How to pick a contractor? How to renovate it? How to pick your insurance? How to find lending? It's everything. Like it's just kind of sharing my experience, what I've done. I've closed on three. But basically, it's an A through Z system. Um, the lecture style is very similar to these weekly sessions that I do. So you can check out my YouTube if you haven't already. I have like 15, 16 sessions out at this point. I think I have one lecture that I uploaded for my course as a preview. It's about an hour long. You can check that out, see if you like that style. But I'm more action oriented. Like if you sign up for the course, like you better send out letters. And I'm gonna hold you accountable to sending out those letters. And I'll even do it for my students for like additional fee for my time. Um, But so far I had about two students already close on their first apartment complexes off market, one in Mississippi and one in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, which is a pretty hot market in downtown. But if you want more, you can shoot me an email. Would be happy to share a link of the course. It's about 120 videos, 12 modules. And I'm pretty engaged with the students. Like usually it's light today, but usually the students pop on. So yeah, you can email me, Brian, if you want more details about the course. I make it more affordable because I want people to send the letters out, you know, to get the deals there. Cool. And cool. That's it. Thanks for hopping on, everyone, for making multifamily money. Once again, if you want to reach out to me, just shoot me an email. And hope to see you in the next session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.